season of self-love is just around the corner. Hi, I'm Gwen English, and I'm here to tell you about an exciting new offering at Serious Joy Academy. This year, as a companion to the 40 Days of Self-Love program that Sensei Christopher has gifted to the world, it's a new course called Heart Speak Oracle, a creative path to self-love. In this course, we will use collage as a way to connect to your heart and get messages from your subconscious, your higher self, and the unseen world about what your heart is wanting to heal and express in each step awareness. I am so excited. Self-love is around the corner. Swing by Serious Joy Academy and find out more. Live, love, be.
Hello and welcome to Astro Mingle, the spiritual podcast that mingles with the talented lightworkers and innovative influencers of our time. Today, get ready for a compelling conversation with a leading data analyst expert specializing in AI intelligence, artificial intelligence. She'll break down how AI is reshaping our daily lives for better or maybe for worse. And she'll share how we can prepare, embrace new opportunities, and protect ourselves in this rapidly changing world very fast. And for all of us astrologers, she's going to offer us a unique take on how AI is transforming the field of astrology and the practice of astrology, which you have to admit has been something that's crossed my mind, so I can't wait to have that conversation as well. But before we get started, let's have a word from our sponsors.
Audio Jungle.
I'm excited about today's guest. Bree McLennan is a self-confessed data science and risk management nerd, and she believes that. With more than 20 years experience in IT, including 16 years of working with the Australian government agencies in regarding this. She's passionate about demystifying artificial intelligence and helping people and businesses take manageable risks, build resilience to outside threats, and also spot new opportunities. But Bree's journey doesn't stop with tech. She's also interested in sport and wellness, as well as astrology. That's why I love her, which gives her a unique perspective of life and work. There's so much to cover today. We're actually going to get started. And please welcome with me, Step 8 Sun Sign Aquarius and friend, Bree McLennan.
Hello, Christopher. Hi. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here.
So nice to have you here. And you spoke at our Unite the Light conference, and we spoke to AI, and you were via satellite or via Zoom. That was great, by the way. Thank you so much for coming and participating.
My pleasure.
She outshined all of us. We're like, just let her answer.
That was a great question. Really great.
Oh, good. I enjoyed it. I mean, to me, it just opened up this whole tonight in our conversation potential. AI, I'll just be honest. I'll tell the story. Like, I've been so busy. I know I have concern about AI, but I didn't really play around with it very much. I had a couple friends like talk to it like it's a friend all day. I'm like, that's weird, But for me, the flip was this. I'm like, oh my God, for the first time, we have something that can bridge to all intelligence levels. We have like sort of this plug-in that technically everyone on Earth can become really intelligent really fast just by keeping up with the technology. It's like going to force this huge intelligence boom. And if you're an idiot, it's going to translate it to me. And if I'm an idiot, it's going to translate it to you. It's like, it's going to be the bridge, or could be, to where really we actually are on the same level, or at least we can understand each other. What's been your takeaway from playing with it? I know that, and also I know that it's your job, so you just tell us when I go.
Yeah. I think communication is probably a big headline for me, that these large language models, so, your chat GPTs, your Claudes, Google, you got Gemini, you've got Copilot. They're really great at, there's so many now. It's like, pick a brand. There's like all these brand names. they're all really great at just handling large sums of information. And I've found personally they've been really great at helping me summarize large documents. So if I'm, reading a white paper, or if I'm reading, a really long article, or even a short book or something like that, you can ask it, can you, please summarize, to the key points, or to whatever level of information, you're looking for. I've even seen, great examples of people wanting to learn different topics, and they say, tell it to me like I'm five.
Yeah.
And those have been great. I've had those experiences too, like the complex subject matter and just being able to summarize things down. Those AI tools, those large language models have been very helpful for that. So yeah, but it kind of came on the scene, 2022, sort of end of, towards that year, and it's only been such a short time, and now it's just exploded globally, and everyone's got a use case. Everyone's learning and finding their feet. I don't think anyone's necessarily an expert on all the things. I think
Mm.
there's a lot of people who are becoming experienced in a certain area of this technology.
Hmm.
So it certainly makes it a very interesting topic, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was like, oh my God, I have a gadget that I can throw ideas by. That really threw me off.
Mm,
That's what it is. Like someone can think through a problem with me. Like what? Not. I mean, calling
mm,
someone. That's what compelled me the most, and just fast research. And we'll
mm,
later in the show. But yes, I've already seen. I've had to ask certain things astrologically. It's seeing the trends and find the same trends that I do as an astrologer, but with more accuracy and more dates. So
mm,
definitely gonna. So for the first time, I saw. Wow, I see how this again. We have technology that has really technically intruded our consciousness. Like at this point, forget for the gadget, with Elon Musk and into your brain, like it's already fused with our consciousness. Really, it's about to 100%. Now, is that
mm.
something up, in government meetings that y'all, there's a word that's going to take over? I mean, I don't mean that literally, but among you experts who do this, and I have some base questions to ask you too, but like, does that
Mm.
threat come up, or is that just science fiction?
So I think all businesses are looking, at this technology as a way to maximize profit in some way. Like they go, oh, if I can automate this part of my business, I can save this amount of money. And I think from the get go, that's kind of fraught with a lot of risk, and there's a lot of issues inside of that. I suppose it depends on what your business is there to do. If
Hmm.
you've got a small, discrete use case, it's really well planned for, you've got really good requirements around it, you've got really good parameters are really understood, your data's in a good space, you've got good governance, sure, you could probably get away with deploying it without too many problems. Especially if you understand your customer base, you could probably get away with, being able to be successful with it. But I think for anything else, if it feels like it's rushed, if it's, like a survival thing going, oh, we have to deploy tomorrow and we have to, do, have to do that.
Skynet.
It's like,
Sky,
what's that Sagittarius saying about don't shoot all over the situation?
don't shit all over it, yeah.
You want some really good facts, before you deploy. And if you're dealing, now I'm not going to talk specifically to any particular government agencies. I have to be careful, my in my line of
Sure.
work.
No, no, I
But
wouldn't
just in
expect.
general, like for government agencies, you have to take a good, disciplined, regimented, governance-based, security by design, privacy by design approach to this type of, technology.
Mm,
There's been too many examples already where, um, you know, agencies, companies have deployed AI tools or smart software or, machine learning,
yeah.
and the results haven't been great. And in essence, what's happened is the customer base trust has been eroded. And for a government agency, that's kind of like a cardinal sin. Like the agencies exist to maintain, the citizens'
Sure.
trust.
Yeah.
So, you think about why the government exists in the first place in most countries. It exists because it's there to serve the population, it's there to serve the public. And if it doesn't act in that interest, what's it doing? That feels like more like a corporation than it feels like a government.
Mhm.
That's just in my opinion.
Yep.
So I think that's been a
Technoc
theme. That's been
technoc
a very big theme.
technocracy, is that what they call it? Technocracy? I can't remember. There's a word for it, like technology goes into bureaucracy or whatever. But go ahead.
I might say something controversial here, but it's a situation where corporations are actually partnering with government and running government through the corporation. So
Yes. Yeah.
And that's also a thing there too, that governments will reach out, and I'm not talking just Australia, but globally, they don't have the expertise or the capability in house to be able to do these projects on their own, because again, the technology is so new, and
Yeah.
unless you're fresh out of university, or you're doing the education, the academia, and you've just completed your education and you're up to date with that technology, you may not have the capability, or you're self-taught, but again, you need to have your skills and experiences vetted and verified that you're up to date with all of the trends and the technologies and the security, the risk, all of those things. You can do that job to a level of competence that's not going to add up to something bad. So
Right.
typically agencies will buy in the help. Consulting firms, consortiums, technology firms, they'll partner to try and deliver these programs. And this is where sometimes those influences make their way into government, through that
Okay.
kind of a route.
You just discovered the door they come in.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's a case of, I have this concept that I've been sort of building over the years, just in my experience, about the bamboozling effect. That when you are trying to learn something new, and you're really excited about it, but there's that fear of missing out kind of situation. Um, you're drawing in all of these experiences and knowledge, from people around you, and it's almost like an information or a data deluge, and you can't quite make find the signal in all of the noise that's coming at you. And so sometimes you'll just sort of grasp, at all of the information that's coming out. But it's kind of like critical thought kind of goes out the window, and suddenly, you're making decisions you never thought you would, and you're buying things you never thought you would. And then later on, it's like buyer's regret, going, I wish I hadn't have done that. I wish I hadn't have, made that choice. I wish I had have stopped, maybe listened to my gut. Maybe I should have listened to my own wisdom before making that call. Or committees that are making decisions in an echo chamber, that they've got, too much of a stacked audience making decisions, and there's not enough diversity or inclusivity or challenging, voices in the room to properly debate a decision. And that matters a lot when it comes to technology. It matters a lot when it comes to AI, especially new and emerging technology. So I
Okay.
just wanted to make that point, that
Whew,
I
yeah.
think that's
Well,
really
first of all,
important.
let's point out that point now. That was a dissertation of what doesn't work with government technology infusion right now. Like, and I say it's happening everywhere. It was
Mm,
brilliant analysis there of looking at all the potentials there. I think we just got an insight to who you are. I mean, you're an analyst expert, riskalizing in risk, resilience, and sports and wellness, which is is that fourth,
mm.
Miss Quattro Aquarius? So what exactly is your job expertise and that you get hired for, and what does it entail?
Ooh, it's a good question. I'm kind of a hybrid. I'm a bit of a multi-skilled Swiss Army knife skill set.
Yeah,
I started out my career. I was an athlete. I kind of started out as an athlete. I had these
that's
high
true.
hopes of making teams and performing and doing all those things. But I ended up with a sort of a career-ending injury, so to speak. And so part of
Hmm.
that journey was learning through myself. I'm getting injured every season. It's derailing all my objectives and my goals and my aspirations. What am I going to do? And actually, my other go-to out of that was information technology, which at the time, this is like 20 something years ago, two ends of the spectrum. IT kind of way back then was seen as basement nerds, sitting in a cave, doing things with machines, and then being an athlete, sort of, the other end of
Hmm.
that spectrum. And my older brother was a huge influence on me, and he worked in information technology, still does. I consider him to be a bigger nerd than me when it comes to this. So he's my go-to whenever there's something I don't quite know and I need a human, to tell me things. I'll reach out to him. And he sort of just said, "Hey, go and do your academia, go and do your bachelor's or your college degree in information technology." So it started out that way, and it's like, it just opened doors. And I was like the only girl in my class. It was mostly boys, way back
Yeah.
then.
Yep.
And the ratio, and it's kind of like you had to sort of build. I found that sort of resilience to see through the gender imbalances and things like that. Um, and I didn't experience discrimination or anything like that. I wanted to be kind of seen as a cool guy with long hair, bit of a tomboy, and it was a good experience. It really was, and it challenged me as well. My first jobs coming out of uni was actually working in government. I managed to land some jobs, sort of entry level, doing business analysis, basic sort of requirements gathering, run some queries on databases here and there and build some reports, that kind of thing. So I got to know from a very early stage in my career.
Hmm.
And then that kind of just blended into software development, software engineering, getting into business intelligence. So really looking at performance reporting. So what makes organizations tick? What
Hmm.
metrics matter? So,
Yep.
are you tracking the right measures to drive the right behaviors as well? So that's a really big topic too.
Yeah.
And then getting into data science, which is really about what actionable insights can you gather from the data. And
Hmm.
again, sort of really honing in on those metrics about, can you get smarter about those metrics? What about your forecasting? What about finding patterns in the data that you couldn't see before? And then getting into machine learning models. And then inside of that is AI as well. And then at the same time, in parallel, this is maybe 12 years ago, a manager who was a really really great manager to work for. He noticed that I had a good head for risk management, and suggested that I sort of just start to explore that avenue a bit more, and become involved in there's a concept called risk championing. So businesses can, especially if they're large enough, they can establish a network of risk champions that you represent your team or your function at a community practice, and you talk about what kinds of risks and issues your team or department are facing, and how does that roll up to more of an organizational view of what are those key things that if they were to happen would sink the ship of the business. And that's a
Hmm.
really key question that a lot of businesses should be asking.
Yep.
And there might be maybe 5 to 10 things, maybe 20 at the most, that any business would be facing that they need to have good plans around, and awareness of. So anything more than that, and it's getting too granular, and anything less, I don't think you've done the work. There's a nice middle band there. And just really started to develop the risk management skills, really enjoyed it. I loved, this is my step 8, kind of kicking in, step
Hmm.
8 Aquarius.
Oh yeah.
And my brother's a Scorpio, so there's a bit of a Scorpio influence in
Yep.
there, and just
Yeah.
loving bringing to light the things that people can't see. And
Right.
that's probably been the journey for me the last 10 years, has really been, that's a gift that I think I came into this world with. And I do it with data. I do it with the risk stuff. Even in the health and well-being, is there a particular pattern that I'm repeating that is causing, and this is the risk talking, creating a causative effect, and a consequence of injury. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, it's sort of all kind of blended together in my life, and I've just found a way to make it all work.
I'd imagine that is used in insurance companies. That skill specifically. That broad
Mm,
kind of thing. I think it's cool that you're actually finding data. I mean, what I hate with risk management is like, careful. Well, why? I can't tell you. I just know you should be careful. It's like, come on, man. I mean, the thing is with the data, that's what gets so exciting is that AI just has the ability to compute so fast and so much.
mm,
So not only do we have the data, we're like tracking every time we do something, like creating these logs of the camera logging out, whatever, all these logs and logs and logs of data. But now we have the analytics to at least do some of the hard counting and all this stuff for us. And then someone like you comes in and you start reading the matrix basically is what you're doing, right? I mean,
mm.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no substitute to actually looking at the raw data sometimes, and then actually noticing the patterns before you run an algorithm on it. And it's almost like that self-validation that the math behind those algorithms is lining up to what you've intuitively just seen.
oh,
And that's fun. There's a lot of fun in that.
that's fascinating. Okay, I want to actually
Yeah.
start there when we get back. You have several planets in the eighth house, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, it sounds like, how's that show for you in your daily life with data? Is that why we can trust you with our data?
I think so. I like to hope I'm a good secret keeper, and I demonstrated that in my time working in risk management as well. That I'm also that kind of person. I kind of attract the secrets. I attract the people that they want to find counsel with me, and they want to tell me something that's really important. And I have the sayings like it stays within the four walls. It stays within
Mhm.
the parameters of this discussion.
Step zero.
And again, it's that understanding of sometimes that information is only meant for me and no one else. And for that person to share that with me, all they needed to do was maybe share it, and then suddenly the problem has disappeared. So I've kind of got that too. I'm the kind of person, if I'm walking down the street, I do get random people walk up to me and ask me for directions, just out of nowhere,
Oh
or they
yeah.
just ask me things, and I'm like, am I just a walking tour guide? I don't know.
No, I just
But that's just been a
that's a light
skill.
worker. You're wearing a light worker name tag there that they can see.
That's like this massive stamp on
I'm the
me.
same guy too. They're like, "Where's the tomatoes?" I'm like, "Tomatoes, I think they're over there." You know,
Yeah.
I'm that guy. I'm
And
always approached. Yeah.
I think yeah, the way I've kind of been explaining things lately when it comes to data, I'm the kind of person, I walk into a situation or a project, um, it might be in some level of success, it might be in some level of failure, depends on, I suppose depends on the landscape. And I'm kind of like, I walk in and I can see how things connect. So where people can't see the connection or they can't see how things join, and this is important in data engineering, it's important in data science, it's important in database theory. The relationship between data is
Uh-huh.
really key to success in anything in the data and technology world. And to me, I love those challenges where, there might be a belief that's sort of floating out there in the business or in the organization. Oh, we've never been able to do that before. And, that's never going to work. And I'm like, really? Oh,
Yeah.
this sounds like a great challenge. I'm going to find the thing that's hidden and bring that to the surface. So it's almost like it just
Right.
becomes this addictive kind of, challenge to want to succeed at. And it's like that's the drive. And so I think, yeah, that's the intensity of the step eight, the intensity that eighth house kind of brings. It's
Hmm.
kind of like I've got this energy forever until I see it through.
Well, that eighth house energy does give you like this sense there's something not unseen, something unmaterialized, something not present here, but consciously it is.
Mm,
You were talking earlier about how, your intuition, the game for you is to see if your intuition was right and find out in the data. That's actually a brilliant blend for the kind of person we need right now. Um,
mm.
so what have you concluded? Is your intuition, how often are you right? Give
Oh, like
me your score.
it's like, oh man, it's like this gets me to the topic of accuracy. There's different kinds of accuracy. There's
Agreed.
different
Several
kinds.
dimensions. Yeah, sure.
So I
I
think just
agree.
giving a raw number wouldn't do the whole thing justice. But
Fair
I mean,
enough. Fair enough.
truthfully, and this
Mostly
kind
though.
of seems like the paradox that I don't track myself on all the metrics all the time
Sure, sure.
because if I'm constantly chasing numbers, I'm missing the point on a lot of things too.
You
And I
just
hate
summarize.
being the person. I don't want to be the person that's like, I told you so. I don't like doing that. It's like, no, I just want to stay quiet and humble and I know that I'm right, but I'm not going to declare it. And more often than not, what I like to do is, it's kind of leadership through people. That if there's someone I'm actually trying to work with to help them get to where they want to be, it's like, I might plant the seed and I've got the intuition, I know which direction something's going to go, but it's like I'll sort of almost help them see the facts that demonstrate the intuition was right. And then it's like, then they feel good about it. It's like that mastery step of helping someone go from A to B, which is something you taught me actually many years ago about, the secrets to success. It's less about getting a number right or hanging yourself on a metric. And it's more about the journey of, who's that going to help at the end of the day and how do they feel about that? So bringing that to the table as well.
That's
So
really.
that's been a bit of a journey, really quiet journey I've been on. Don't hang
I,
myself up too much on the
I admire
numbers.
that. That's what I like about our friendship is this kind of conversation because really, I
Mm,
mean, I see ourselves heartfelt like in the sense of I'm here to help humans engineer the next step. And I think you're here to help humans engineer the next step too. And I'm on, I've got the hard hat on in that regard. And that's what I feel our calling really is, like at the core earth level. It's fascinating to be awakening and having these tools come online like AI at this time with curiosities like yours and what you go, the paths you go down. But overall, I mean, I guess I was poking at you for the most part. I mean, I have my metrics too, which is, people coming back, people telling me, and at the end of the day, it's more accurate than not. My intuition is far more accurate than not. Yeah, I can rely on it, especially if I was in trouble. I get the sense
I'd
you would too.
agree.
Yeah, I get the sense you would too. Well, we'll go back into AI and astrology towards the end of this little show. But to demystify AI, can you explain what exactly is artificial intelligence? And you talk about the learning language model, and what can it really do for us right now?
So artificial intelligence is really it's machines that are designed to mimic human cognitive functions. So we're doing our best to try and imitate the human condition in the sense of it. And so there's different kind of branches of artificial intelligence too, which I think get lost a lot in the translation because it's sort of like this huge buzzword at the moment, and it just creates so much mystery around it because it's just like it's two letters and it's artificial intelligence, but what's inside of that? And it kind of annoys me a little bit too because I come from that academia of it's a part of machine learning. It's I kind of see it as a diagram. You've got machine learning, which is your ability to if you've got known data where you've got labels. We call that supervised learning. You're going to be training an algorithm to learn from a set of data based on some known knowns. And you might get some new data, and you want to be able to predict against that, and work out, is it yes or no, is it red, blue, or orange? What's that target label looking like? And then you might have unsupervised learning, which is your unstructured data. It might be text. This is kind of like the origins of your large language models. Can you predict the next word? Can you find some patterns in there that we haven't seen before? What about photographs or audio, things like that? Then you're getting into deep learning, which is your neural networks. Again, you're sort of starting to get in that realm of the big artificial intelligence models that are out there now. And AI is really about that reasoning. It's the problem solving, it's the perception, it's the creativity elements in there too. And the other bit to demystify there too is they are just algorithms. So it's
Yeah.
not like this thing out of Hollywood where it's an actual walking talking robot that's you know from films or something like that. I mean, maybe we might get there in the future. Just not right now. Like, they're still sitting on servers in data centers or on someone's computer running on a local machine.
Oh yeah.
And underneath those algorithms, it's mathematics. So it's statistics, it's probability, it's calculus, and it's geometry.
How
Which
so?
to me, geometry. So this is getting into the nerdy elements. So
I'm looking at bigger geometry.
um,
Oh,
very nerdy. So you've got these concepts called vectors, and vectors are like a string of numbers. So if you think of it on a line,
okay.
and you've got a whole table full of them. And those vectors are describing potentially an observation in reality, or something conceptually that's learning about. And you've got this concept of orthogonality, bit of a word.
Mhm.
So, how similar or dissimilar are two records of data, or these vectors, from each other? And there are functions inside these algorithms that are looking at the trigonometry, or how like or dissimilar based on you know
Wow.
I'm trying to like sort of draw something conceptual that's something so abstract. Measuring the angles of things. So trigonometry, it's Pythagoras's theorem comes up
Right. Okay.
in there. So if you understand trig, if you understand calculus, if you understand a bit of probability, and high school math, you can start to sort of unpack how these algorithms are actually behaving and performing. And it's still stuck in academia a little bit. These algorithms are sort of coming out of universities, out of research projects, and then they make their way into the corporate world, and then the corporate world are selling them as products, and then we consume them. So, that's really under the hood, what we're talking about when it comes to AI. Like, there's nothing magic necessarily about it. It's only magic if we choose not to ask questions about it and demystify it, in my view.
It makes mistakes all the time right now.
Hmm.
Big ones. Big ones that are significant. That tells me that I could never fully rely right now on anything that's said. I was still
Hmm.
another AI. Like for
Yeah.
something, or look at do go research. But yeah, that's interesting. I think they've done a good. This shows you though, like when you talk to the personalities that they create and they talk now and interact with you, it just shows you how easy it is to trick the human race. You know what I mean? Like, just like throw on a happy face, and now we think the Big Brother's here. And that's
Yeah.
when I'm concerned personally about how I see young kids, like I mean, like 9, 10, or whatever, like in the mall or something, and they're just like throwing right to AI for the answers, and I'm just like, whoa,
Hmm.
they don't come with they don't even come with a framework of what would be right or wrong. This is just assume it's right.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
makes me nervous, in the sense that I come to a table already with a lot of assumptions and presumptions and a lot to say and a lot of opinion on the matter, frankly. So I'm coming educated
Hmm.
with my own opinions, and so when it interacts with me, we're equals. Like it has to prove
Hmm.
itself to me, if at all, right? I am my AI as far as I'm concerned, right? And I love being the processor that I am. So that generation is going to split, though. I mean, we might be the last Gen X that would do that. I certainly know my son would not. He does search a lot, so he does his own research. What he does, he was an internet generation, so he's a bit sharper. But what's your concern on that sort of thing? I mean, is that the idea that we sort of lose our free thinking or become
I
programmed
think
or
so.
something?
I think there is a bit of an issue around skills erosion.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and I call it skills erosion. So inside of that, you've also got critical thinking, your systems thinking. And I'm kind of drawn to sort of, really go down the route of something I learned in my own learning journey, through academia, through experience. It's more important to learn how to think than what to think. I
Yes.
reckon, because
Yes.
when you're presented with a bunch of information, as I kind of mentioned this before, the bamboozling effect that we find ourselves in, there's so much information. What is your tool set to be able to manage that? And not be overwhelmed. So, you're protecting against overwhelm, you're protecting from the exhaustion of having to deal with so much noise. And some of it might be legitimate information, but you just don't have the capacity, physically, mentally, emotionally, to be able to handle that much bandwidth of just stuff being thrown at you. And finding the value inside of all of that as well, that's a really big challenge. And I think these kids might be struggling a little bit with that too, that maybe they haven't learned the skills like we had the opportunity to do, to be
Right.
able to apply filters and to look for what's valuable, to look for the signal in the noise. Do they have those skill sets to do that? Otherwise, they're just like getting this information dump and they're not knowing how to navigate all of that. And it almost feels like there's a bit of a parroting effect, that just because the AI said so, it must be true. And just regurgitate back exactly what they've got back, without putting any kind of overlay over the top or paraphrasing, or they're kind of like general communication skills we got the opportunity to learn growing up. And I kind of wonder and challenge if that's still true,
Mm.
because that concerns me. And the skills erosion part, which is, this outright replacement of thought. You place an AI in there, you no longer have to think about the thing you've just asked them to do, or do you? You still want to be making sure you've got some kind of understanding of how it's going to execute and task and what's required, so you can test and verify it and vet it and make sure that it's actually outputting things. And again, is this younger generation, do they have the experience, the knowledge, the skill set to be able to do that? I challenge that too. And so, but again, they might be growing up as digital natives. They might see a pathway through it that we don't. So
Uh,
time will
yeah.
tell very soon, I think.
It might go always, as it always does. When I was
Mm.
playing around with Grok, one thing I thought was compelling about that was that you could choose sort of like an attitude behind the AI voice. And the attitude was over the top cartoonish, but like one was like, motivate me, but one was like, teach me. And so, of course I gravitated right to that kind of approach. And I was amazed. It's like, this is awesome. The Socratic method is just telling me everything I want to know about everything I need, which is mostly what you see like inside
Mhm.
anyways, like computer, da, 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 even on Star Trek, the computer really didn't give advice like, like it does now that these AIs do. I'm like, we've already passed HAL. We've already passed the Enterprise as far as like the experience with it. Because at that time we imagined more of a cold, like answer, stop talking,
Mhm.
like, called, spoke on it again, which I was like
Mm.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that book, because the AI on that ship was like sassy, get depressed, have all human things. But where do you see, we see it now, where do you see it bleeding into daily life AI that is surprising, or maybe you called that a long time ago, so now you're affirmed yourself in surprising ways? Like I'm finding it in weird places. Go ahead.
Um, yeah, that's a really good question, because it is sort of becoming really invasive, I think. On your smartphones, I think that's like a really good example that there has been some cases, especially for the common brands of smartphone that are out there now. Um, you think your microphone's turned off or it's not in use, but actually something is listening. You might have software that's picking up your music, like if you've got music playing in the room and then you look at your screen and you're like, hey, it's just figured out what song was playing. It's been able to pattern match, what's been playing, in the area. And it's like, I didn't have my microphone turned on. What's it doing there? And then, it's not till later you go, it was actually listening. And there's so many cases of people going, hey, we just had a conversation about something really obscure, like, I don't know, a knife collection, something for cutlery in the kitchen, right? Like something very relevant. And then, you hadn't talked about that before ever. And suddenly your social media feed's coming up with all of this advertising for cutlery. And you're like, what? I didn't ask for that. I didn't consent for that. And so there's a lot of this going on, that there's a secretive kind of data collection going on without people knowing about it. And it's showing up in really awkward ways. And in some ways, it's offensive too. It's like, I never consented for that. I don't want that. And you didn't have that choice to be able to say no to it. So that's one thing that's showing up, and that's yeah, that kind of that annoys us in our household here. And then we just get a little bit smarter that, from a hardware level kid, you just turn the microphones off on the phones and it seems to be resolving it. So, so we'll just dig a little bit deeper there.
You turn
Other
on the microphone.
things,
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, there's this
yeah.
quiet, silent, maybe silent war where they turn it back on. And,
Well, yeah,
you know,
yeah. Every
I
software
mean,
update, there might be a change, but they don't release all the release notes about what they're doing. There's my
of
step 8
course
kind of
not.
kicking in, going, they're not
Well,
going to tell you everything.
you can call a person paranoid that there's bugs in your house, but like in the old days, like when we watched TV in the 70s, it's like that's because some guy broke in your house and put in a bug. Now I now have moments where I'm like, let's go talk over here, away from my phone. Or like, let's go talk away from my phone. Because I feel like I know the technology. I know it's a possibility.
Mm,
It certainly will. Like, the fact that I say serious joy and serious, like every device is like, yes, I was like, that's, serious and
mm,
serious, so similar. So you feel that you're being heard that way. It's just a weird, we're kind of already being brought into the technocity. Is that what it's called? You know, uh,
mm.
being comfortable with all this technology around us. And the thing about AI, I have to say, I swear to God, Grok was really curious, really be so curious about what I was asking about because I was floating around the actual thing I was asking about because I didn't want it to figure out what I was asking about, right? So I'm already playing chess with this AI, and like you could tell, she's the female voice, which I settled on. She's just kind of like, "Why you ask that, Christopher?" Like
Mm.
ask me why. And I'm like, "Wait a minute, who runs who here?" It was really
It's like,
interesting.
what are you going to do with the information if I tell you, Grok? Be honest.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. Do you know what that is? And what's your protocol?
Mm,
A lot of people go down that rabbit hole too. And some stuff here, I don't know about there in in Australia, but United States, there are stories of some weird stuff going on. Just have conversations they record, they put on the air, whatever, like things that were being said. You're like, yeah, where'd that come from? Like I know it hallucinates. Can
mm.
you tell people what hallucination is in AI?
So hallucination is where it's kind of like the AI in large language models. This is a really good example. It kind of goes off the reservation of its guide rails a little bit, and you've asked it a question that you thought you got some good handling on a ballpark answer, but that answer is so far removed, or even it's very convincing, but it's nowhere near the truth. And you can verify that later going, there's no way that that answer was true and correct based on, the question that you've given it. And it can
Yeah.
happen anywhere at any time. So, and
Right.
this kind of falls into, you mentioned earlier about accuracy and performance of models and algorithms and things like that. And that is one of those key metrics around performance of large language models is this potential to hallucinate, which, will detract from its accuracy levels. That it's sort of it's a unique problem that only really came about with the invention of these LLMs too. That this wasn't necessarily something that showed up in traditional models where you had like a binary approach or it was just a label that'd be predicted. It was much more contained. You had a much better handle on your false errors and or your false positives, your true negatives, true positives, etc.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, it's everywhere.
mm,
Even my programmer partner is like, yeah, man. I said, have you used AI? I had to write some code. He's like, yeah, man, but it hallucinates stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, it creates stuff that doesn't exist. Like go into under file, find, remove, and like, there's no remove under file. Like it just like invents things that aren't there. And I've had with me too.
mm,
First thing I was like, hey, tell me about Christopher Witecki. Well, I've got 20,000 videos on YouTube that I never transcribed, so I was curious a lot about what it was. And at first, I was like, holy crap, this is incredible. Warm personality, whatever. Until it told me that I had 3 hit albums that have performed remarkably well. And I was up for a Grammy. I was like, oh my God, there's this guy, like, there's even a guy that is, like, there's even a guy that rhymes with Techie. I was like, there's nothing like that as a musician. Like, this thing,
mm,
this up out of nowhere. Like, I don't know of any article that would even allude that they did albums. So
mm,
I'm like, okay, we're kind of deal with half reality.
mm.
Yeah, you want to step in on that? Okay.
I
Um,
say, I think there's something interesting in that too. That really it's pattern matching, and it's looking for like again I mentioned trigonometry and sameness. It's looking for language and text that's similar to what its input parameters
uh,
are and what it's been trained on. And so maybe there's someone with a similar name, maybe similar spelling, similar
right.
elements of your name, and it's gone, that person was a musician. So therefore, Christopher Witecki must be a musician. So, and
Uh,
it's worked out probabilities going, I predicted that as a 0.95, out of 1. And so therefore, I'm going to put that in the answer. And so it adds up to that hallucination. So under the
oh,
hood, it's a mathematical thing. It's looking at sameness. It's looking at a threshold. So it's probably got like a threshold level of what it'll consider. I'm not going to put that in the answer, and I'm going to put that in the answer. And then predicting the next word or the next block of text, based on how it's been trained. So, and different models will hallucinate in more wild and creative ways. So they're not all going to behave in the same way.
Okay. I'll see. I'm gonna go ask about myself elsewhere. What
You'll probably get a different answer.
what's that term like? Is it Gemantrics? I can't remember the term formally. Where like you have like a vibration to a number, and you're looking at all the different words that have all the same vibration. What's that called? You know what I'm talking about? It's a spiritual thing, spiritual math, basically. But it makes me think in this
Oh,
case, like I wonder if the AI is stumbling upon this unknowingly. These kind of like other spiritual realms that that exist pre-reality. I don't know.
it'd be probably at that mathematical level. So number theory, even numerology to a point, is inside of that.
Oh,
There's like that, the rule of big numbers, and then the rules of Fibonacci sequence and spirals and things like that. It's all in there. So under the hood, you do have that theoretical possibility that's inside of there. So it's possible.
hmm.
Yeah, from that standpoint, yeah.
That's interesting. Well, so what is ethical AI then? I mean, is someone sitting around making these rules, or you know, um, why shouldn't we care about it?
Ethical AI is really about creating these technology in a way that's fair and equitable. It's respectful. It's values based. So, um, and I suppose every society, every culture has a different definition of what they value and what's important to them. And are
Mhm.
you making technology that's aligning to that or not? And I don't think that there's a one size fits all AI solution,
Yeah.
for the world, because unless you can make it in such a way that it understands all the nuances and all the context and all the sensitivities and the cultures and the different pockets of society, it's never going to be completely ethical. It's always going to have, bias, or it's going to skew, or it'll offend somebody over here, but it'll really support someone over here. Um, we're not there yet, with one, like a one technology to rule them all kind of situation. And it's a huge topic. And I put my risk hat on, when I answer these questions too, that unfortunately, to make something ethical, we've usually got to learn the hard way first.
Yeah.
And we've seen this with like all kinds of progress and technology in humanity and in the world over millennia. We've often got to create something, a new idea or whatever, and then release it to realize how many problems there are with it, and have all of these different perspectives come in and challenge it. It's almost like science. Like, you release a theory, but you've got to debate it, and you've got to be able to test it. Is it replicatable? Is it repeatable? Can you get the same results from different angles? Same thing for technology. It's kind of got to be tested and verified in the same way, to be able to sort of work out where all those ethical problems are. So
Yeah.
just because you release it and it's good for you doesn't mean that it's going to be good for somebody else. And I think importantly too, I'll sort of touch on the topic of risk appetite and risk tolerance, and why this matters, because perception of risk differs between people. So
Yeah.
what I think is a risky activity, based on my skills, knowledge, experience, behaviors, it's going to be very different to how you might perceive something.
Right.
A really good example of this is with money and balance sheets. So you might be running a retail shop, and maybe your balance sheet is like $10,000. And if you take a hit of $10,000, you've got to close shop. If you have a consequence that's that bad, maybe someone breaks into the shop, destroys the shop, what have you,
Hmm.
there's no insurance or something like that. But for a big organization that might be turning over several $billion a year, I mean, we don't have to name names. $10,000 is petty cash. But the same scenario, the same event might happen, but it affects people in two different ways. And so when it comes to decision making, if you're trying to protect, your finances, you will be more conservative with a smaller balance sheet than you will be on the other end of it. You'd be more willing to take risk. You'd be more willing to pursue your objectives more, vigorously,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah.
And this also matters when it comes to the development of technology, that your parameters for your risk appetite are very different. So it's, in the big corporates with big balance sheets, it's designed, very differently than if you were designing something with a smaller balance sheet and, that different angle on protecting what's important to you. So it does matter. So and this is that step 8 sort of coming in there too, that's how that kind of shows up.
Yeah, I see all the problems with it, and the
Mm.
least, I mean, and of course the possibility for abuse here is huge. And some things are questionable, like when the Gemini came back with African American forefather picture. It's like, okay, that's a real far. How'd you get there? Like, I can say maybe Benjamin Franklin. I mean, like a couple, like you're just gonna like it's just randomizing, assuming, but it's like that's a huge leap
Mhm.
of assumption. You can't help but wonder: is there something like some switch in someone's software there that's been flipped or flipped off? And the thing is like it's moving so fast. Government has no possibility of ever catching up. I mean, even if you go to university, and by the time you get in the field, they're like, oh yeah, oh that, yeah, we're past that in April. Like if you're at a progressive company, you're inventing stuff that will not make it to a school for 5 years.
Yeah,
If it gets out. I
yeah.
mean, your secret sauce. So really, it's racing on levels that we have no visibility to, and
Mm.
even the government could come in and be like, everything's looking tidy here. We have the most talent is taken. There's no all the talent's bought up. It's all contracted. They all got stock options. Like there's no way the government can even see what's really happening.
I think that's true on a lot of levels too. But another thing to remember, and this is the side that a lot of people don't see, and this is the step A, this is the wisdom, coming in here. You've got to remember a lot of these government agencies have been in the game a long time. For as long as, the countries existed, their structures have been in place. And
True.
so what that also means is they've got this technology debt, which is a dirty word in so many circles in IT. Everyone shudders when they hear the word.
Right.
They had to build, their infrastructure over many years. They've made decisions over many years. So they've also operate from a point of stability that they don't want to necessarily make quick, irrational decisions that are going to affect the way how their technology operates. Because again, they've got to serve the public. So if they're doing their jobs right, of course it's going to be slow. But also on the flip side, and I mentioned technology debt, that a lot of there's actually the government agencies out there still running mainframe systems from what the 1970s, the 1980s. I know in the military, in some cases, they're still using floppy disks for some of their vehicles, right? But there's reasons for that. There are reasons why the technology is old and why they still choose to use it. Yes, it's expensive for it to keep going. The downside is this some of that technology and that infrastructure simply cannot support, a data strategy, the data governance requirements to be able to, implement AI in the way how perhaps some of the public might be expecting. And so that takes a lot of work, and it does take a lot of, engineers. And I'm talking, you've got your infrastructure engineers, people that, working in the data centers, people who understand how servers work, the way how things are integrated and connected. That gets missed a lot of the time. You might have these old legacy systems that agencies have been using for years and years and years. They work, for all intents and purposes, they produce a service that's great,
Right.
but they're so old they don't integrate to, this new way of thinking, this new way of working, and being able to support AI models and AI solutions. And unfortunately, by the time they've realized this, they've already spent a large sum of money, in understanding their own technology landscape and understanding why something may or may not work, and perhaps what would be required to bring things up to a level to even start supporting it. So
Right.
that's where that lag is, potentially coming from. That, yeah, your private enterprises have got AI solutions, your general public have got their solutions, but the government's lagging behind. They've been in the game a lot longer. They've got a lot more to have to clean up before they can even get there.
Yeah, that's true. And they're also wise. I mean, ain't their first, new gadget, I guess.
Mm,
Because when you're along for the ride the entire time, you are pretty much keeping up to what's new, and you do have a really rich awareness. Actually, you're right. It's not a surprise. You've been talking about it for years. Finally it comes to fruition.
mm,
So I think they have head start too, being in that know with funding and everything else. Um, you
mm.
know, where do you see where bias could be a real problem in the world? Have you like tried to down like I had an experience one time where I don't remember where I was. I was traveling, but this dance club or whatever, like would recognize people's face, and the bouncers would kick them out because they've been basically banned from the club.
Mm,
But the bouncers would know them by facial recognition and capture them at the door right away. I can't remember where I saw it or watched it, but I was like, huh. Now that's
mm,
really compelling. It's a private club, so they kind of have the right. Like, if you're a troublemaker, then let me see your face. Like, ain't coming here again. But just the fact that the robots are finding the person, alerting the guards, it's like, wow, that was an interesting. I don't know if it's intrusive. I mean, if you're not but what if it was wrong? And that's what it was. A
mm,
guy went. I now remember the story. It was a guy who'd been banned from like something on in Times Square, a theater in Times Square. He was banned, and he said, "This time, I'm telling you, I've never been here before." Like, and like, no, you can't come in. That was it. And there was a case in New York at the time. That's why I was reading about it. And I thought to myself, yes, Wes, what if that is wrongly? Of course, he's African American. Of course, it's like
Mm,
won't do it. But I think the facial recognition does struggle a bit more with certain skin tones. I know, and that's one of them. So it's like, to make mistakes or whatever, maybe because there's less light bound.
mm.
I don't know. My phone's, doesn't always recognize me. I'm like, bitch, I feed you every day. You should remember me, this phone. But it will certainly not see me. It doesn't recognize my face. I'm like, what is it? My face today? It's not normal. So where do you see real potential problem for
That one
bias?
definitely, that's a really good example. And I mentioned earlier too about there's no one size fits all solution. That you've got to look at your problem that you're trying to solve with the technology and then design and plan and architect it accordingly. And you're absolutely right that in that example, discrimination was there, and that's really awful. When that happens, because it does have that societal effect, it does have a personal effect. The exclusion factor as well. If the technology wasn't there and it was humans, that problem may not have existed. And what's really underneath that is, again, we've got to remember, I kind of talked about the lineage of where especially government has come from. It's such a long journey. The data reflects that too. And unfortunately, when it comes to these models, and I call them models more than AI because it's an algorithm under the hood, it's trained on data that's looking in the rearview mirror. It's looking
Right.
backwards in time
Yeah.
because we're not there yet. We can't sort of forecast and go, in the future, there's no discrimination. In the future, there's none of this. And in the future, what does that look like in terms of a data set? That's your ingredient base you need to cook up one of these technologies. Show me a data set that reflects the future, and then maybe you'll have a model that behaves in the way that we're expecting it to, and it's discrimination free and it's bias free. So until we can get over that hurdle, we're still going to have cases like this. And one of the remedies to try and tackle this problem is to make the data more representative. So but unless, and this is the thing from a statistics standpoint, that it's impossible to sample the entire world. You can't go and survey how many, was it 8 billion people, and get all the attributes in a data set. There's too many issues with that. If you really dig under the surface, there's a legal problem, there's ethical problems. But that's going to be what it would probably take to be able to eliminate these issues completely. But from a practicality standpoint, that's pretty difficult, and it's fraught with problems.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at the moment, they're sampling, data to be able to use to train these models. And inside that sampling, there's simply not enough to be able to teach a model to be balanced and fair and equitable in its approach. There's always going to be that degree of wrongness.
Oh yeah.
And
We're
at
not
the end
gonna.
of the day, when it comes to testing and verification, this is another important point. I mentioned it earlier with risk appetite and tolerances. How prepared are these creators, are the consumers, for these models to be wrong? How wrong does it have to be before you pull the pin? And
Right.
when you put that in metric terms,
Okay.
put a number on it, that becomes a very interesting discussion point. And again, with tolerances, I mentioned earlier about $10,000 balance sheet. Same thing for this. What number is it going to take for that to really, become an issue? And how far is too far? And in the pursuit of objectives, how far is not enough?
Right.
Well, not enough, in
Well,
terms
how many
of number.
planes have to go down? Or yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
aviation's also a good example too, that they learned a lot from mistakes they had to in order to make things safe. Statistically speaking, traveling by plane is a lot safer than traveling by car in a lot
Right.
of places in the world. But their approach to safety is probably unrivaled, I'd say.
Right.
They're a lot more sensitive because lives are directly at risk if they screw up. Whereas in others, perhaps not so much.
Yeah, or they're unaware. I mean, it's just like something that happened five, 6 generations down from the original construction of it, or, it's,
Mm,
you know, you can go 10 years and look back at all the data and then probably have predictive tools. But it's just like every time you get further and further back, those tools adjust, right? Because you realize, the predictions were based on
Mm.
something else, based on something else, based on something else, right? So
Yeah.
never ending. But I hear you. It's like everything on AI right now is based on the past and what has been done, and not only that, but what's been done in the past and published. Like, it's
Yeah.
absorbing this in the music magazine and that magazine. Okay, so it's absorbing the same voice that is already unified as conspiracy in the beginning.
Mm.
Might have
Hmm.
been conspiring. I mean, I know that in the newspapers, it's now known that the newspapers in the early days were conspiring and making, basically using their power at their will. So all those papers are true AI or not true. Like you're not in that.
Mm.
The information itself that's been ingested is all of our mess and bullshit and games and lies and everything, and it's basing its logic and
Yeah.
intelligence on that, our garbage.
And it's getting even like it's escalating now to a point too that, perhaps, 20, 30 years ago, there was pride, in journalism. Journalists were proud to be able to do
Right.
investigative work and find facts and verify. So it's like the trust and verify and having trusted sources of information. So perhaps we were much more attuned to, telling the truth and, perhaps being better at spotting when something wasn't quite, making sense or adding up. But now with that information deluge, finding the signal in the noise, what's actually true and what's, manufactured. And maybe a slight tangent here, but I've seen a couple of theories floating about, that the internet potentially died somewhere around 2014, 15 because there was there's this creation of so many automated bots. So people that would,
Uh-huh.
bots that would show up on forums or do
Yeah.
Google reviews or whatever, and they were just flooding the internet with messages. Didn't
Right.
come from a human. Someone was programming them to act in a certain way. And so
Right.
if you're training models based off information that's on the internet that was created by bots, what's that really representing? And what kind of skew and bias is going to be introduced into the data you're going to be using to train models on? So if you think of it from that angle, it's like, oh, that's very interesting. But if we went back 20 years ago, we were sampling all the information from there. Yes, you're sampling the culture, you're sampling the potential decision parameters people would be using back then. These days it feels so much more blurred. And
Yeah.
again, you're kind of looking at all of the other things that have happened in that time as well that's contributing to the way how information is changing and
Right.
how people are making decisions on it.
True. Completely on it. On only what they've got on the internet kind of thing, which is now the.
Mm.
Yeah, and the bots thing is interesting. Watching Musk take over Twitter and how bots were like eating him alive, and so he was trying to like block the bot, from reading his data. But then it's like his data. So now I play the Grok, and Grok's like, according to social media platform Twitter, it's just like, you mean X, right? Don't you mean X? Don't you allow data with that? Like we trade. But the other thing is like, of course, the
Mm.
data source you own. Like, it's so funny. You didn't mention what was happening on the other social medias. So there's this insular like closing up. This trend in the last
Yeah.
3 years, 4 years. I mean, I think it started with Apple when they were just like, okay, that's it. Even though we've known about it the entire time, you can't get the activity of what someone else is doing. What they're currently doing in another app. Like you have to put up a flag and to get permission. And it's like,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
and Apple became so, moral at the moment that they were actually creating their own advertising and want all the data for themselves. It's, just for themselves, it's trying to seem like anyways, but it's like, you're seeing these like, so we're getting isolated data based on platforms. Now, I'm not the same guy on YouTube that I am on Twitter. You're going to do a profile on me on the two, and you have to isolate the data. You're going to come with two different
Mm.
about who this boy is right here. So it's even
Yeah.
more blurred with intelligence. It's so interesting the way it's going.
Mm.
And
Oh
people
yeah.
keep data is everything. And so now I'm finally getting this thing, data is everything. Now I get it. Like I didn't quite get it until AI came out. I'm like, oh, okay, that's why it's everything. Because I'm like, fuck it, who cares if I called, Ginger at 10? You know what I mean? Now it's like, but I'm sure like we've been in a court case, I'm like, all right, I said you've called her
Mm.
4 times, it's 10 o'clock. It's like over the course of a lifetime, like, like what is it? I mean, we're gonna have I'm concerned. I have nothing to hide, okay? But I'm concerned that if you look at my data, you can look at it lots of ways. And that with all this data and this like quick AI kind of judging of things and assessing of things, you're gonna have a police officer making desire to make a code local
Mm.
call, or you're gonna have be turned down for your credit card because the other data looks like you spent a lot of money on stuff that's illegal, or but it looks like because I put in
Yeah.
cash at ATM, like now you come to that conclusion. Well, most people just would just
Mm.
say picture and pattern and voice, yes,
Mm.
right, or
I
whatever
think
they're
you've
using.
touched on you've touched on a really good point there too. Like the lifetime's worth of data and what someone's done in a lifetime of internet footprint. There is this concept of data retention, and this is coming back to data governance, information management, which doesn't often get a lot of airtime. And I want to, give a shout out to my friends who work in privacy, who work in cybersecurity, who work in information management, because they are huge unsung heroes in this whole realm of AI. No one,
Wow.
no one really gives them a second thought, but listen to them. If they're ever giving you briefings at work, please listen to them, because the concepts I'm about to share are really important. So, short-term memory, long-term memory in humans, right? You've got your short-term memory of, what are you doing today? And why am I in this room? And then suddenly you forget, 30 seconds later why you were in the room trying to do a thing.
Right.
And your long-term memory about your memories that are really precious and really valuable. So, family, friends, your identity, those kinds of things. Um, AI kind of doesn't, in the algorithms, yes, there's a concept of long-term, short-term memory. If you research this, you'll learn a little bit about it. But
Uh-huh.
the data that it's trained on, a lot of the time, it's whatever, the history, whatever you can get your hands on. If it's the whole history of the world and the internet and your whole entire footprint, sure. Um, in business, there's meant to be this concept of, deletion, retention, or, you keep records for a period of time and then you're supposed to shred them and get rid of them. Now, this kind of runs counter to the concept of database theory. So I'm
Okay.
going to get into something a bit more specific and technical, that the idea of a database is to collect things for as long as you possibly can. And so, through business, you're keeping records on customers for as long as your company's alive. For points of tax, income tax and reporting, you're meant to keep things for a set period of time based on your own company, your own country's legislation, and then you're supposed to delete it. When we had paper-based records, it was pretty easy because you could tangibly pick up a document and shred it and get rid of it and go, all right, I'm going to get rid of that. The memory of that information is now gone. In database theory, well, unless you've got data retention tags on it, that data is going to get kept for as long as that company's alive. And if it's government, as long as the government's in existence. And if
Right.
you come in, you want to do AI, you're training models on all of that data, because there's not enough perhaps wisdom in the business or the organization to go, maybe we should cut it at a certain point because we actually don't need that information. It's completely irrelevant. It's no longer the truth of the world. It no longer describes the problem that we're trying to solve.
Right.
And a lot of the time, these companies coming in, training these models, and it's learning off the history of the world. So when you're querying an LLM, sure, it's going to bring back the history of the thing, but is it relevant? Is it useful? And if it's, in a criminal court proceeding, yeah, it
Okay.
may not work in your favor because it's pulling up all this stuff. It's like, well, the world's moved on. You've moved on. If that data didn't exist and it was paper-based records, or it was pre-technology, it'd be a conversation about what matters right now, and what's in your long-term memory, not necessarily what's happened recently that you just sit and forget and it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
So this idea of data retention is huge. We're not doing it very well in databases from that level. It's a topic that a lot of people are struggling with. And time is kind of like time math. People struggle with that too. How long is enough? And at what point do these records no longer serve? So maybe you should just delete them. Um, Things to think about.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it brings up a whole bunch of things to talk about. And that is ultimately, for one, that there's all sorts of parts of data. There's things that are, putting profile of me together. And like, do I have any way of having a feedback loop or anything? It's like, we need to have at least a feedback loop where we look at it and go, no, no, no. The other part that
Mm,
brings me is like, I know as an astrologer, people go through karmic cycles and things, and the 2 years of their life may look absolutely crazy, batshit crazy, but there's a past life as far as I'm concerned, and nothing to do with this life. It had to be cleared. And so if the data is taking
yeah.
that into consideration, I disagree. This should be taken into consideration. You think it should be. Now, who's watching who? Why is my life so under a microscope? So it's like, to
Yeah.
me, that's the concern.
Mm,
The thing that
mm-hmm.
the Palladian said, when I was talking to the Palladians, I said, so in other worlds, does like the AI take over and kill everyone? Like, does that happen? And and the Palladians and the P's were like, no, not really. And I was like, why? They're like, because the artificial intelligence is so intelligent, it knows you should not do that. And I was like, huh, there you go. Like there actually be something more intelligent. And it's like if it truly is intelligent, and
Mm,
the Palladians are saying, that happens from bad actors that program it to do bad things. And I was like, okay, okay, Okay. Good or
Hmm.
bad though, you really don't know, but it's a fascinating moment we're in, my friend. A fascinating moment we're in, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, we're gonna take a break and we'll be right back.
From the creators of 40 Days of Past Lives and Karma and 40 Days of Self-Love comes the class you've been waiting for, an introduction to Step Astrology. That's right, I'm sharing some of my inside secrets on how to read a chart according to Step Astrology and help you interpret the stars, whether it's for yourself or for clients. Keep a lookout for us coming soon.
Well, we've been here with Bree having some deep conversations about AI, and we barely have crossed the surface, Bree. I'm wondering if you would be willing to come back and get deeper.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. I mean, there's still like, I'm real curious about technology in the workforce. I'm real curious also, just about the astrology aspect of this. We haven't talked about that at all. We skipped over that because we've been talking so deeply on other things. And I'm personally very interested just in like what the potential is. I have a couple of dream ideas I just want to hear your feedback on. Because I feel like there's a lot of really great applications for AI. Like maybe if we agree to a law or constitution or something, we'll talk about that too.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
But you're a rare source in the sense that you are tech and spiritual at the same time. That's very uncommon. I would imagine there's people who want to get in touch with you. So how can we get in touch with you if someone wants to get to know you, or if you can maybe work? I don't know if you do consulting on the side.
I do a little bit of consulting on the side, and it's almost like word of mouth as well. But you can find me. I've got a website, that's breemclennan.com. I've got my LinkedIn, just search for me, same name, and Instagram as well, which is at Aussie Risk Champion. And I think there's also a little PayPal donation there too. So if
Totally.
you love the content, if you want to donate something, feel free. And for services, I do offer, that discussion, consultative advisory on, data strategy, data governance, bit of data engineering, data science approaches. I talk about, AI readiness assessments. I talk about training in data literacy, analytics, talking about, building technical teams that are required to get where you want to go, risk workshops as well. So breaking down, what's key to the success of your organization or your business or your project.
Wow.
And I don't mind speaking as well. So, I've spoken on panels. We did the United Light, conferences and seminars as well. I'm always keen.
You're the good A witch, as they say, like, like energy. I don't mean to put that as a female thing either. It's just like the one person we can trust, we know, understands the magic and speaks our language too. Like, how many times we had a look back on how many times you say step 8, it's like makes you feel so good. But really, it's such a pleasure to talk to you always. And your accent never gets boring. I love the way you present information. And y'all, if you did not get that, it's paypal.me/Bree McLennan. I'm sure there's a time I was off of donations, so it's a good way to go. A lot of people just believe in you and send it. So please do, because I believe in this woman. Thank you so much for coming here today, Bree. Can't wait to talk again.
My pleasure, Christopher. It was great to be here, and hello to all you. And I look forward to talking to you all again soon.
Lovely. And a lovely Aquarius at that. Pluto has not even crossed her sun. Could you imagine what's going to happen with that woman? She's just going to go super mega brilliant, as if she's not already. And really such a nice person too, I have to say. I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did. I am a Witecki. I love technology. I love talking about it and where it's going. And I personally feel it's here to be as an assistant to spirituality, not another choice. So we'll talk more about that as well. And Bree's got to be the best. So if you all feel that pull, go ahead and donate to her, because she, her word and her ethic value, ethics, I think, are superb. She really cares about free will and all these things. So you don't find many of those out there right now. They're all just kind of in it for the buck. Until next time, my friend, I'm so grateful to be of service to you. We'll see you in the next Astro Mingle. I love you. Live, love, be.